forget all of the above. We're going to go back into Alexandria.
Before the families have left? Or after?
The families have left.
So you're back. I mean, you're in Alexandria. You're not worried about your wife, the kids, or nothing.
Yeah.
Good,
Okay.
perfect.
Now, on the 5th of June, I could feel it coming, okay? And, but it was still peaceful. We didn't expect anything like what happened. I told the Egyptians working in the consulate, I need to make a telephone call to my wife, so that cost me 5 Egyptian pounds in advance. They went into to the city to arrange for my long-distance call to Athens so I could call my wife on the 6th of June, which is our anniversary,
Okay.
so I could say happy anniversary.
Sure.
Okay? So that was taken care of. On the 5th of June, I walked my secretary to her apartment and told her, you open that door to nobody but me. And because it was pretty bubbling. The war had started on the 5th. And it started with the Israeli Air Force monitoring the traffic of the Egyptian Air Force, which was the only credible Air Force in the Arab world at the time. And
were they equipped by the Russians?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is all Soviet equipment. And the Israelis waited. Now, they could feel this thing coming on, okay? in say, 1, 2, 3 June. And the Knesset met. And in a 24-hour session, the consensus was 5% the Egyptians will fight, okay? And 95% said, there's not going to be a war, there's no problem. And the prevailing mind was someone from the 5% who said, and what if it's 5%? We cannot sustain a war of attrition. We have to hit them. We have to be preemptive. And they agreed. So on the 5th of June, the Egyptian Air Force made its pass around the Levant and came back and landed in Cairo. While they were refueling, the Israeli Air Force came in and shot up every single one of their aircraft.
They were all on the ground at one time?
All on the ground refueling.
That's like Pearl Harbor almost.
It was Pearl Harbor almost, yeah. So they eliminated the Air Force, okay? At that time...
How could they let that happen? That's not very tactical.
No. Well, the Egyptians didn't want to go to war. They didn't want any part of it. It was Assad, the current Assad's daddy, who sucked Nasser into dumb things. But that's a whole history study. Anyway, on the 5th of June, I deposited my secretary, and as I'm walking back to the embassy, I wasn't aware of this, but the Israelis had dropped an 11-man UDT team, underwater demolitions team, into what is Pearl Harbor for the Egyptian Navy, Alexandria, or Scapa Flow. I mean, this is their naval base.
And which is the city you're in?
This is the city I'm in, yes. This is where we have a consulate general. And I was unaware of the fact that they had picked up 10 of the 11 of that UDT team. And there was still one on the road. And guess who they thought it was? As I'm walking from my secretary's apartment back to the consulate. 5 times people pulled down on me, vigilantes. And I was so tired, I was unflappable. So shoot me, I couldn't care less. I'm pooped.
Really?
And I had enough Arabic at the time to impress upon him that I'm the American consul and I'm going to the consulate. And I managed to talk the first 4 of them out of it. The 5th one was not going to hear of it, at which point an Egyptian cop came up and he said, what's going on? And da-da-da-da-da-da. And he said, okay, let's prove it. And I still feel the bruise. He grabbed my arm. And
the cop did?
Huh?
Yeah, the cop did?
The cop did, yeah, because he knew I was Israeli. And we walked up to the gate of the consulate. We had 10-foot high wrought iron fence all the way around. Very beautiful building. And when we got there, the consulate was surrounded with militia, blue helmets, British style, and fixed bayonets. And I walk up to the gate, and it's closed, and inside, in a white uniform as opposed to a blue uniform, was the officer in charge, and he's having none of me. He doesn't believe me.
Really?
Yeah. At which,
And was he British or American, that particular person?
oh, he's Egyptian.
Oh, he was Egyptian.
Yeah. Yeah, they seized our consulate,
I see.
which is illegal. Anyway, I'm on the outside looking in, and he's not paying attention to me, or he's not accepting my words, at which point our gardener, who was living in the garage, came out to pee. And he said, "Oh, hi, Mr. McMillan, what are you doing here?" And the officer in charge said, "Do you know this man?" "Yeah, that's the American consul." So they let me in.
By a gardener's.
Thank God for the gardener's bladder. Yeah. And so the following day, I walked home. I was only 2 blocks away, and had breakfast, and the phone rang. And I never did figure out who was calling. He said, they are attacking the British consulate. Okay. Now,
They meaning the Egyptians.
the Egyptians, okay, because they could not admit that the Israelis, after all, there were only, what, 1.5 million Jews in
Right.
Israel,
Right.
and 110 million Arabs
Right.
spilled all over the area. And everybody knows that the Jews are cowards who were led like sheep to be slaughtered in Germany.
Right.
So it couldn't possibly be the Jews who did
Right.
this. It was you Americans and you Brits. You
Right.
flew your aircraft off your
Right,
aircraft
right,
carriers.
I get it.
So, because they had to have a scapegoat,
I get it.
okay? And this was what they spread among our people. And the funny part is 5 days before that, when our dependents were going to leave the following morning to leave Egypt, there was a reception, I think it was at the Greek consulate. And all the diplomats in town were there having a drink and chitter-chatting. And I talked to the British consulate general, or consul general, and I said, "Are your dependents being sent out too?" "Good heavens, no, Hugh. We Brits don't flap over every silly little thing."
Yeah.
Well, 6 June, about 7
were
in the
flapping,
morning,
right?
I get a call. They are sacking the British consulate.
Oh.
And the British consulate general was also the quarters for the consul general and his family and his beautiful 24-year-old daughter. They lived on the top floor. They lost everything they had. It was all burned out. And that was a whole other story. And then a few minutes later, they're sacking the American library. USIS puts libraries up all over the world. And these are good libraries. They're not a propaganda item. They're a place for you to come and read in your language, okay? And they're headed in your direction. So I managed to get back into the consulate, and I start burning papers and all that sort of thing as a defensive measure. And then we're in the vault. I've got it all blocked off. And there's a big cheer every now and then when the tires on our cars blew up as they were burning them. The mob had gotten out of hand. I am firmly convinced the mob was created by the Egyptian government, allegedly spontaneous, and it got out of hand. They were getting kind of rough. And about that time, in the smoke-filled vault, trying to burn stuff out, the phone rings. "Your call to Athens has been put through, Hugh."
Your wife?
And I said,
What
please,
timing.
please tell my wife I'll call her later. I'm kind of busy right now. And one of my officers didn't get back to the consulate. And he told me his story. he drove up, and an Egyptian officer said, "Are you an American?" "Yeah, get out of here, they'll kill you." And so he did, and he went off to another nearby building. This Sinclair was an oil company.
Sinclair with the dinosaur?
No, I don't know. It wasn't Sinclair. It doesn't matter. It was an American oil company that the Egyptians needed. They needed the help. And so George was with them, and he was on, I don't know, the 10th floor or something, and he could look down into the consulate, and he saw coming out of the consulate a little bitty Fiat ambulance with literally with arms and legs sticking out the windows. They had a driver, an officer, and something like 8 of us squeezed into this. And George reported to Cairo, which reported to Athens, they're dead. Okay? Well, one of my friends in the Egyptian Foreign Ministry, bless his heart, had a Greek girlfriend that he wanted to marry, and she didn't want to get married. Maria. Well, Maria was taking care of Janice. She'd go out to the hotel every day and say, "Let's go shopping," this sort of thing. On 6th June, Maria was there at the hotel and said, "Have you heard from Hugh?" "No, let's go shopping." And Maria kept her out shopping all day long until finally the Greek radio said, "There are no deaths, they're okay."
Awesome.
And then she drove her back to the hotel.
How did Maria know, or she didn't know?
Well, because it was on the radio
I see.
that the Americans at the American Consulate General in Alexandria are all dead.
What a sweet lady that was.
Yeah, oh, she was just wonderful, just great.
I mean,
Yeah,
Wow.
she just didn't want Jan to get it.
well, that,
Yeah, so Janice didn't even find out until I came. Yeah,
oh boy.
yeah, those were interesting days.
Where else were you felt like you were in the middle of things?
Well, when we arrived in Japan, and that would be 1955, about March, there were riots. The communists were trying to take over the Japanese government, and we had a lot to do with thwarting their efforts. And that was a little dicey. But Japan was pretty peaceful. It was just a wonderful tour. We got to travel all over the place. And I'd love to tell you some stories, but I can't tell you.
Okay. Did you spend any time in Eastern Europe that
No.
you can talk about?
No,
Okay.
I never got behind the curtain, ever. Well, I was in Berlin, and that was much later.
Before 89 or after 89?
Oh, way before. I retired in 78.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Where was I? Let's get out of Egypt.
Japan?
We were in Japan.
Yeah.
We were in India.
No, you haven't talked about India at all.
No?
You've spoken not one word of India.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating. Just fascinating. We had, the government gives you a stipend for your rent to pay for wherever you're going to live. And most of my colleagues would use that stipend to the penny and not go as one sou beyond it. Janice and I felt we have a house in Virginia that is being rented, and we can afford to put more money into our housing allotment, which we did. And people thought we were crazy. We were not crazy. We had the whole top floor of a building 1 block from the gateway to India.
What city is this?
In Bombay, India,
Bombay.
which is now Mumbai.
Mumbai, yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. It was a hollow square building with stairs, no elevators. And I will never forget one morning as I'm going down the stairs, our then 6-year-old son runs to the railing. yells down, "Bye-bye, spy guy."
Really keeping that under his hat, isn't he?
He didn't know what he was doing at all. But Bombay was fascinating. Just fascinating.
Like, why? Just the amount of people and the caste system. What was?
Well, we had things like, thanks to Jawaharlal Nehru, we do not have a caste system in this country anymore. Of course, my family's Brahmin. Yeah, okay. But we learned a lot about the various structures. I'd never heard of a Parsi, for example. That's a religious group. They are Indian, but they're from the Parsi religion.
Oh, I've actually never heard of Parsi.
I hadn't either. They're very nice people, very accommodating, very helpful.
But are they different from Hindu?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they are.
Oh, yeah.
And different from Sikhs?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
I would equate them sort of to being American Jews. They're slightly different,
Okay.
but they're people.
Right.
One of my biggest adventures in Bombay, and I was pretty much the junior officer then. I was a U.S. consul and a political officer. And we had a brand new ambassador, Chester Bowles, who was at one time a candidate
Yeah.
for nomination as a presidential candidate for the Democrats.
Right.
And he was our brand new ambassador. And he had...
What year was this again?
This would be 62.
So
Or
this is
three,
Kennedy,
six.
Kennedy Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It was prior to 63.
Okay.
Okay? It was 62. It might have been early 63. Anyway, Ambassador Bowles sent out a missive to the various consulates, and wanted to know, what should I do when I visit your city? Okay, to make a presentation. And all the other people said, take him to the dairy that we provided them. Take him to the milk producing thing that we provided. Take him to the whatever and whatever. And I said, take him to Bombay Institute of Technology. This is a UN project, and the United States of America is paying 70% of the bill, but the thing is staffed entirely with Soviets. And so the Indians think that this is a Russian gift to the Indian people. And all of the people in the consulate general thought, McMillan, you're out of your tree. Ambassador Bowles didn't think so. He said, that's what I'm going to do. And the other guy said, it's all yours, Hugh, I'm not touching it, okay? So I got to ride with Ambassador Bowles in this limousine, and we became very friendly. Huh? We liked one another. And we went to the Bombay Institute of Technology and just made a presentation. Just what a wonderful place. We're working with the United Nations. Our country is providing funding for. And I had lots of people thereafter say, your ambassador is brilliant. I thought that was a Russian project, Hugh. So I felt pretty proud.
That's a good deal.
I'd done a good. Yeah. And before we had Chester Bowles, whose wife is just a wonderful lady. She went native. She wore saris.
Oh, she did.
And she rode a scooter.
Okay.
Crazy. You don't do that. They were just lovely people. But prior to that, we had John Kenneth Galbraith. And I had a chance to, this guy's a giant and a very close friend of the Kennedy family. And I had a chance to meet him, and we got along well. So life has been a fantastic adventure. It's fabulous.